All right, so if you watched my June wrap-up, you already know that I finished 2 Dresden books in the month of June, and that was at the very tail end of it, where I burned through Small Favor and then Turncoat in about 3 days. So here's my review for Small Favor. And funny that this made so many people in my Discord mad, and I didn't understand at first. The way that favor is spelled on this Orbit edition messes up the whole, if you ever actually notice with Dresden books, if you can see them, let's see. You probably can't even read these, but until, I think, Battleground, right? No, it's still the same thing. So if you've ever noticed with the titles of Dresden books, each word has the same amount of letters in it. So you've got Full Moon, Stormfront, Grave Peril, Summer Night, you get it, right? Cold Days. It's always like 4 and 4, 5 and 5. Small Favor, for some reason, did 5 and 6, and that infuriated a lot of people in my Discord. And I didn't get what was happening at first. I was like, why are you guys mad? It's just a different spelling. It's like a European spelling of favor. They're like, no, it's because the letters are the same. And people were mad. So, Small Favor. There you go. Let's talk about it. Okay, so, Small Favor, book 10 of the Dresden Files. And as of me reading this, holy crap, my favorite. Because, wow, this book has so much happen in it. So, obviously, if you have seen any of my reviews before, and the fact that this is book 10 of a series, I am not going to do a spoiler-free review of this. My spoiler-free thoughts are, go read it. It's awesome. If you're this far in the Dresden Files, keep going because it's great. So, Small Favor. This starts out with a totally wholesome and lovely scene.
And it's gone.
When it is broken up by some billy goats, which at first Harry doesn't really understand what they are. He knows that there's some kind of fey creature, and it turns out to be weregoats, which leads into one of the funniest moments of this book, where Harry's trying to tell Bob about what was happening and figure out what these are. And he's saying, are they satyrs? I always say satyrs, these things. And then you actually find out that they're weregoats. And immediately Bob, being Bob, just starts grilling Harry and giving him shit for getting beat up by the billy goat's gruff, which was just hilarious. When I saw that on the text, I was like, oh my god, this is great. So of course, 3 of them attack, and then 2 bigger ones, and then the final big MFer at the end. Which that also has a hilarious moment at the end, which, again, this is spoilers, where Harry basically tells him to go get him a donut. It's just, Harry's great. So this starts off, on that sort of silly note of, okay, the Fae are back involved in Harry's life, and you go from this introductory thing of these weregoats attacking, and you sort of roll through this as the book progresses, that these goats keep coming back, and there's this awesome scene with Harry when he's sort of I think he's walking through a neighborhood or a city, and it's getting really cold and snowy out, and that Mab is coming. So Mab shows up, and he's like, oh shit, I'm in danger. And they have this conversation where she's just like, okay, here's the small favor that I have for you. You gotta save Marcone. And Harry's like, holy shit, what? What are you talking about, save Marcone? Because there's this whole thing about Nicodemus is back, and Nicodemus could potentially turn Marcone, or, give him a coin, and that would be effing terrifying if Marcone accepted one of the Denarian coins and just gave in to fully the dark side, even more so than he already is. That would be terrifying if he did. But Mab, after talking to Harry and being like, you're going to do what I have to say, you owe me favors, you're going to do it. And Harry was just like, well, I thought the warning, or I was worried that you were here to attack me. She's like, no, look behind you, and there's 2 more billy goats, and they have machine guns. So you've got 2 billy goats gruff this time, and they've got AK-47s or whatever they had. So Harry is dealing with these and getting the shit beaten out of him constantly, as always. Of course, whenever one of these books has Nicodemus and Michael and the Knights of the Cross involved, it shoots right up there for me, because I love Nicodemus as a villain. I think he still is one of the best, if not the best, current villain in these books, because he feels the most real. You don't sympathize with him, but you can see where he's coming from, and he's actually a compelling villain. he's not just like a random mindless demon or something that just goes to kill people. He actually has his own plans, and he can actually be convincing, because like later on in the book he almost plants that seed of doubt in Harry of, talking about how his friends are looking at him differently, and maybe he should come to Nicodemus' side and they could, accomplish all these things together. So like he's a really good, well-written villain, and I love that. And anytime he's here and the Denarians are involved, that means you get Michael and Sonya, and rest in peace Shiro, my boy. But you get these, because Michael's great and Sonya's growing on me too, but anytime Michael and his family are involved in the series, it's a lot of fun, because Michael and Harry's dynamic is so fantastic, because you have this, godly man carrying a holy sword, fighting demons, and then you have Harry, who's just like crass and swears, and just their dialogue is always great. What's really cool too is you get a lot of world building in this book too, and sort of like history of where the swords came from that the Knights of the Cross use, and how each one has a nail from the original cross in them that kind of gives it its holy being and power. And I guess the 30 coins that the Denarians have are religious as well. So that just brings this whole other element of just like world building in this atmosphere of the Dresden Files, but also it sort of lends validity to Michael and what he does, and what he serves. And it continues to baffle me that Sonya like doesn't believe in God in this world, because he's literally a Knight of the Cross and has all these religious artifacts and just is like a agnostic. It's just pretty funny. There was this whole time, and I think Murphy actually does end up fighting with one of the swords at one point. I forget the name of it, because Amaracus is the only one that I remember. She actually fights with one of the swords at one point, and unless I'm misremembering, I think Michael and Sonya at one point are talking vaguely about like who a sword should go to, and they say her, which I of course thought was Murphy. So I went in this entire book thinking for sure Murphy was going to get one of these swords, which it really surprised me that she didn't. I still think she's like a candidate to wield one in the future, but so far she's not. And, Harry spends this whole time trying to figure out who to give Shiro's sword to. There's this awesome involvement of the Archive, aka Ivy, and how the Denarians are basically trying to capture her and give her a coin and turn her. So you have this big battle that happens between Harry and Kincaid and Ivy, who, holy crap, Ivy's strong, against all these Denarians and their sort of minions. A bunch of the Denarians die, first of all. Like, Harry and them just wreck house, but Ivy gets taken during this battle. One of the ones, Tessa, because Harry's like basically being grabbed by a bunch of them, and Tessa's talking a bunch of shit to his face. She goes, "Tell me where the little girl is." And Harry looks up at her and goes, "I wish I knew. That way I could exercise my free will to tell you to go fuck yourself." But after this fight, I mean, you get to this point where they understand that they have to get Ivy back, right? But Sonya and Michael sort of come to the realization that of the 30 coins, like, they have 24 of them. They only need 6 left, so that means there's 6 Denarians with coins. And if they could get them all and kill the Denarians, like, they could be done. And right off the bat, immediately my mind went to Michael's gonna die in this book. Because Michael starts talking about, oh, if we get all these coins, like, I can retire, I can spend time with my family and not be a Knight of the Cross and have to do all this and endanger everybody. 100% my mind was like, he's dead, he's dead, he's dead. And just like preparing for that mentally, which of course he nearly dies towards the end when he just gets, it honestly shocked me. Like, I thought for sure he was dead during not this fight, but the next fight, or the fight at the end, when he just like point blank just takes gunfire like up and down, and like shattered nose and rib cage and collapsed lung, and he's probably paralyzed. Like, dude got wrecked, which that leads me to think that for sure Murphy has to get a sword at some point, right? A little bit later in the book too, there's just another fantastic moment between Harry and Michael, where this is actually a sort of a serious and emotional, heartfelt moment, because they have this whole plan where, Harry finally says, okay, I understand what I have to do with the sword. I need to barter with Nicodemus to give him some of the coins and the sword for Ivy, because we need Ivy. And that just crushes Michael, right? And you see some of the people around Harry are starting to act a little bit wary of him because like he's so dangerous. He seems to be making deals with demons, and he had Lashiel in his head. He's buddies with some of the vampires. Like, he doesn't seem like the most trustworthy person, even though everything he does is to protect people, and especially the Carpenter family. Like, he's always protected them and had their back. But he has this, of course, like, meeting with Nicodemus, where, of course, it's not going to go well, where Nicodemus says he's got, like, snipers facing the house and talking about, like, he could kill Molly. And he makes this deal with Nicodemus the first time around, right? And then I think there was the second meeting. I'm getting the timeline mixed up of when Harry actually has this conversation with Michael. I think it's later in the book. But Harry's trying to convince Michael, like, what more do I have to do to prove to you that I'm, trustworthy and everything I do is to protect you and your family? And Michael's like, well, you still have Lashiel in your head. Like, how do I know that you're not being controlled? To the point where he actually, at one point, has Amarachius to his throat. So, I mean, there's this huge tension between them. And Harry is just really saying, like, no, like, Lashiel sacrificed herself. She's dead. I don't have her lingering over me anymore. And Michael's finally just like, okay, Harry, where's your blasting rod? And at that exact moment, I was like, where is his blasting rod? I'm confused too. And then he's like, I have no idea. And you learn that, they had actually had Molly look into his soul, or they basically had Molly look into him and saw that there was still a shadow there, which I believe that Michael straight up, like, palms him and, like, the power of Christ compels you, and, like, banishes it. So he just, like, straight up uses the hand of God and, like, cures Harry, which is hilarious because then that, of course, comes back around later when Harry goes to deal with Nicodemus again. Of course, it's a setup. It's Nicodemus. And Nicodemus assumes that Lashiel is still in there. So he's like, sorry to do this, Harry. And he's like, Lashiel, paralyze him. And Harry plays along and, falls over acting like he's paralyzed. And then just goes,
surprise, motherfucker.
And just, like, punches Nicodemus and wraps the noose around his neck and starts choking him. Of course, he gets away. So Nicodemus is going to come back. He's going to live to fight another day. And now he's going to be really pissed off. I mean, just everything to do with Nicodemus and the Denarians, Michael, the Knights of the Cross, and Harry, just all these interactions. Harry being so close with the Carpenter family and basically endangering all of them. And I always think back to, like, that, which book was it, when the Denarian put a death curse on Harry and was like, die alone. Man, people are going to start dropping, right? Michael nearly died in this. I don't even know if he's going to be able to do anything from now on. Like, he almost certainly has to pass on his sword, right? Because now Harry is in charge of Amarachius and Shiro's sword, which, again, I'm forgetting the name of. Something Accius, I'm sure. So he's basically protecting two swords now. So he's going to have to find who is worthy of them and give them to him. I have to assume Murphy's one. I was thinking at the end of this book, I was like, who else is ever going to be worthy of it? Like, I don't think Thomas would be a candidate. Bob can't hold a sword. Molly's like half a warlock and dangerous. So unless we meet somebody, and there's this whole thing of, like, they're descendants of, like, royalty or something to actually be able to wield the sword. So who the hell knows who is even going to be worthy of doing this? Maybe Harry at some point will have one of the swords and actually wield it, but who knows? You do, of course, have, the budding relationship between Captain Lucio and Harry, which leads to him sort of ending his dry spell. This book had a great, other than the one conversation between Harry and Michael about, like, Lashiel being in his head, just Harry, after seeing Michael get gunned down and nearly die, just has this crazy emotional moment, like, where he's in a church and just is screaming at God, like, how could you let this happen? Like, Michael is literally fighting on your behalf, and just, I felt it, man. He's just so mad because it's not like he's a follower. He's not religious. He doesn't believe in God necessarily, but he's just like, he's so angry at what's happening around him, and Michael being this, like, holy knight and not being able to be protected when he needs to. It's just, it was really, really powerful. Yeah, I had to look it up because there's this great part of when he's basically yelling at God. He's, like, in a church, and he goes, the Prince of fucking Darkness gets to cheat and unload his power on the earth twice, and you just sit there being holy while my friend who has fought for you his whole life is dying. What the hell is wrong with you? And this just got to me because it was such a powerful moment. And then, of course, like the janitor shows up. He's like, oh, guess it's a bad time. There's this really interesting moment right after this where like a janitor is talking to him and sounding all holy and stuff, and then talking about like archangels and his soul, and then just disappears. So clearly he's not just a janitor, is he? This, of course, moment with Mab at the end when she's basically calling in another favor saying, you know, Harry, once again, you're going to be my winter knight. He's like, no way, not in hell. And she of course is like, well, I could make Thomas do it. And he's like, you stay the hell away from him. She's just like, you know what? I do what I want. I'm Mab. So that's going to be real interesting if she forces Thomas to be her winter knight, because that would not be good for anybody. Yeah, just great dialogue moments, man, where Lucio and Harry are talking at the end about Ivy, you know, the archive, and how the archive traditionally, when it's passed from person to person, they separate themselves from their humanity, so they're not, you know, at risk of being manipulated and things like that. And Ivy is literally a child, but she has so many of like her own memories and thoughts that she really is just a kid, and she could be easily manipulated and taken over. And that's a terrifying thought because the archive, you know, has all this knowledge. And Ivy got tortured like crazy in this book, and she needs to be protected. And Lucio's trying to tell her that, like, trying to tell Harry it's not good for you to be so close to her because it could mess with her mind, and you really need to just like let the archive be the archive. So there's this huge, basically ticking time bomb that is the archive that could go terribly wrong and fall into the wrong hands, and that would be catastrophic. But one of the great dialogue moments that I want to mention, Lucio's talking to Harry, and she's trying to convince him that like the council can help protect Ivy. She's like, the senior council, and Harry goes, couldn't find its heart if it had a copy of Grey's Anatomy, X-ray vision, and a stethoscope. No. And then of course Bob, you know, helps explain to Harry that he has the ability of using soul fire, which is awesome because he doesn't just have to use Hellfire from Lashiel, which I don't even know if he has access to it now that Lashiel's actually gone, but he can use soul fire, which I guess is potentially more powerful based on your faith and things like that. So that's really cool, and that has a lot of potential. And of course, yes, it does. I did confirm at the end of the book, it's not really vague at all. It's him and Lucio for sure. So that wraps up Small Favor, though. This is definitely my favorite as of book 10 of the series. It definitely did top Winter Night for me. Winter Night? White Night? It definitely did top White Night for me. And I'm going to talk about Turncoat here in the next day or so as well. So this series is awesome. I can't wait to continue on, and I'm going to keep going through these Dresden books, 1 or 2 at a time a month, and here we go, man. Let's get through this. That's going to do it, though. Like and subscribe, as always. Do hit up Patreon. If you want to support the channel financially, it's always optional, but always appreciated. Definitely jump in Discord, though, or leave me a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on Small Favor, some of your favorite moments, where you would rank this at this point in the series. Like, was this your favorite? Do you still have death masks or something else is your favorite? Let me know in the comments down below. And until next time, guys, keep reading.